All right, what's going on, guys? Simple Sports back again. Another episode on NBA playoff basketball, and we are first talking about the Cavs and the Raptors. So let's get right into it. Quite honestly, there isn't much to say about the series itself. It's pretty much over. In fact, I think it is over. I think it's going to be a sweep tonight. So let's run through it. There's no way the Raptors are coming back from this, right? Down 3-0. You can book this one. 1-2-3 Cancun. I don't know what else to say about the Raptors. By far, obviously the season is a long season, but in terms of a moment to be disappointed, this series from the Raptors has been the biggest disappointment. LeBron was phenomenal again in Game 3, no problem at all. What bothers me is how poor these teams are, and this includes the Cavs, this includes the Warriors, this includes the Rockets. It bothers me how poor these teams are at closing out games. Far too often do we see these 15, 20, 25-point leads get erased and often lead to a loss. And I fully understand that. Specifically in basketball, with a much faster pace of play and, momentum seems to mean more because of that, just because 2 or 3 plays go wrong for you while you have the lead, and all of a sudden a 15-point lead could be cut to 8, 9 points in the blink of an eye. And you see that more often in basketball than any other sport. So I get it. But to me, it's a bit much. The Pacers had the Cavs on the ropes multiple times. The Raptors had them on the ropes twice in Game 1 and maybe not so much in Game 2, but definitely in Game 3. I think I got there. I think Game 2 was the more blowout game. Actually, no, I think the Raptors fought back. Point being, they had the Cavs on the rope. They could easily be 1-2 or 2-1 on the Cavs. And, these teams don't know how to close out games. And it speaks so much to experience and talent. Once you get to a certain point in the game, you have to rely on IQ, you have to rely on talent, and you have to be able to put those things together along with coaching to get the job done. And these teams just don't seem to be able to do that, especially against LeBron and the Cavs. Everyone is all up in arms about how well LeBron played in these playoffs, and rightfully so. I'm more concerned with how the Cavs look as a whole and how no team is really taking advantage of it. And I want to be clear about this, all right? There are a lot of people in my world, right, the world of the fans, that seem to think the Cavs are quote-unquote back. And first of all, that's just blasphemous. They aren't playing very well, relatively speaking, to what we know them as or what we have known them as over the last 3 years. They're not playing nearly to that level, and obviously part of that is because it's not the same team. They're playing well enough to win in the East, though, and they're taking advantage of teams not taking advantage of them. And, that, in essence, is a good team. That's what you are supposed to do. So, to me, I don't want Cavs fans and LeBron supporters, like diehard supporters. I'm a LeBron supporter. I love LeBron. I have come to love LeBron over the last couple of years. As I've matured and grown up and really, really started to understand sports. Beforehand, it was all about me being just a Laker fan and a Kobe fan. Now I've sort of understood both sides and also sympathized at some points. So I get it now. I don't want Cavs fans to get their hopes up. My point for all of this is, I think there's a false hope being given from the Cavs. I think they're going to get buzzsawed by any team that comes out of the West, whoever it may be. And at this point, it looks like it's going to be Golden State or Houston. So I think either one of those teams is going to just tear right through the Cavs, no matter what happens. And then also this idea that everyone has had zero doubt that the Cavs were coming out of the East all year. Okay, you guys can stop it, all right? You're lying to yourself, and your blind faith in LeBron James has paid off, and it sort of, I guess you could say, it was expected. And even I have changed my opinions on the Cavs, that they are in fact going to come out of the East, but that hasn't changed. That's changed over the course of the playoffs. and really over the course of the last 4 to 5 games that they have played in. I said it after Game 5 that if the Pacers didn't, the Pacers should have won that game in order to close out the Cavs, and they didn't, and I thought that it was over then. And from that point, I sort of adjusted in thinking that they would very well go to the finals. But let's be clear, they were not going to come out of the East playing the way that they were playing, okay? And so for anyone who says that that was the case and that they believe that was the case, it is simply blind faith that you're going to be right, because there was no evidence in their play that would suggest that. They were terrible defensively. Their offense wasn't clicking all the time. They were shooting a lot of threes, and it was pretty much live by the three, die by the three. It wasn't an efficient three-point shooting team. And I think that was their issue. And the Pacers didn't take advantage of that. They had ample opportunity to close them out. And even if the Pacers had just one true closer, even Paul George, given the exact situation that the Pacers were in, if you replace Victor Oladipo with Paul George, I believe that he could have closed that one out. And again, I'm saying if the series had gone the exact same way up until the final moments in those games, say the last minute or two, when it's like, okay, we're down 2, we're up 2, or the game's tied, and we need our best players to make plays, I think Paul George could have made a couple of plays that Oladipo just simply couldn't. I think Paul George was good enough, for example, on that controversial block, that I think Paul George gets a better shot off and potentially converts on that. But nevertheless, it is what it is. I just think the Pacers lacked any sort of closing player, anyone that could essentially take that game over from LeBron James and the Cavs, because they had him beat. I mean, they had him dead to rights. Even all the way down to Game 7, they had him dead to rights, and they just simply couldn't get it done. And regardless of where they are now, I believe that they have certainly improved, and will likely beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, but that's because they're playing better. As I mentioned, if they had continued the way that they were playing, that wasn't going to happen. The only thing it all means to me is it's going to make the decision to leave Cleveland a lot more difficult. If they had lost in round 1, I think it would have been done and dusted. I think he would have been gone. And, now I'm not so sure. I guess I can't claim to be sure at any point, but I was more convinced in my head that if they had lost in the first or second round, he was certainly going to be out of there. But I think now, with them likely going to the finals, I don't know. Boston's going to be a tough matchup, though. I've slept on Boston, which I'll get to in a second. They're not going to be an easy out, but I don't foresee them beating the Cavs at this point. But I've said that all year, and now all of a sudden I don't know which way to go, because you don't really know which Cavs team you're going to get tonight. I mean, things could still go way left for the Cavs, okay? They still aren't playing great basketball. Things could still go way, way left. So we'll see how things shake out in the game tonight, potentially the ender or the closing game. And, for the record, I just want to talk to the LeBron fans for a second. It will most certainly count against LeBron James if he doesn't win the title this year, okay? I'm sorry, but you can't put someone in a position to gain credit if they win, but not lose credit if they lose. Okay, you don't get to play with house money, especially when you're talking about someone being an all-time great player. And especially when you're trying to put someone on the mantle of greatest player of all time. Losses count. I don't care what the circumstances are; those losses count. And 3-6 in the finals is not good. Period. He doesn't get a pass for any of the finals losses, except for me, the very first one. They probably didn't belong in the finals to begin with that year. Every other one counts, for lack of a better term, and I don't think there's any excuses. You can't say that this is the greatest playoff run of all time and an all-time great accomplishment, which, by the way, I agree with. But then if he loses in the finals, say, well, it doesn't count, and he didn't have a good enough team, or his team didn't show up, or the team he was facing was an all-time great team, and they weren't going to be beaten. You just don't get to do that. Okay, you can't have it both ways. If someone is going to be that great, at some point that greatness has to account for winning, and he's 3-5 with all likelihood going to be 3-6 in the finals this year. That has to count for something. That has to matter. The other series I want to talk about is the Celtics and the Sixers really quickly. Perhaps my biggest mistake of the entire season was jumping on the Philly bandwagon. Ben Simmons has been largely a no-show, and we have finally started to see a real, true example of experience in coaching versus talent in youth. The Sixers certainly have the two best talents in the series and arguably the best collection of talent top to bottom as far as how they play with each other. And how they fit with each other, possibly the best top to bottom, other than maybe Golden State and Houston, but certainly in the East. But what they don't have is experience. JJ Redick has some experience, but it's not that experience. You know the experience you're talking about, right? Those nail-biting moments where you can't clinch up, right? You need to be as sharp as possible with a coach that you can put that can put you as a team and as a player in the best scenario, especially in those late moments where the pace is a lot slower. Even sometimes, depending on timeout situations and maybe the score, is down to like a play-by-play, almost like football, where you have to be precise in execution, both offensively and defensively, and then the ball stops, it's dead, you get a timeout, and you have to go down and score a bucket or get a stop. You don't get that stop and start with basketball very often until the end of the game, and that's when that stuff takes over. Basketball IQ, talent, coaching, that's when you really, really, really see it, and you really saw it in Game 3 with the Sixers and the Celtics, even down to the very last play where they essentially clear out the lane. Covington fronts Horford when in reality he should be playing his backside, and that's coaching. That's great coaching, but you give a big essentially half the floor to work with because they can put that ball anywhere on that side of the court and he's going to get a decent shot off. Even if it's a jumper, he's got Covington on his back and he's under the rim. It's pretty elementary in terms of the execution, but I guess the disguise and how they played everything out, Philly just wasn't ready for it. The Sixers are all but precise offensively and defensively in those moments. And with a team, and emphasis on the word team, like the Celtics, and the coach like Brad Stevens, who tactically, in my opinion, is one of the best I've ever seen, it's hard to say that he's the best coach in the league just because that comes with a certain pedigree and a certain weight. And you have to have some winning behind your, on your resume in order to do that. So I'm not ready to go quite that far yet. But it's easy to see why they're down 3-0 and likely to lose the series. They've been outcoached, they've been outplayed, and mostly in the moments when it matters most, down the stretch. I'm certainly not writing off Simmons and Embiid and the Sixers as a whole for the foreseeable future. I think that's ridiculous. I think anytime you have the recent struggles that they've had followed by this year's success, getting to the second round and being somewhat competitive, with the chance that a lot of people thought they would make the finals, including myself, you certainly can't call that season a failure. I truly believe that they'll come back from this and learn from it and grow from it and improve. It's very essential and necessary to their growth this year, and going forward. So I think this is, although the outcome and the result may not be what they want, but the journey through this is certainly going to help them. They were smelling themselves a little bit, and a lot of people were jumping on the bandwagon, like I said, including myself. So this could be a great thing for them, but it certainly hasn't been pretty. And then, obviously, big props to the Celtics. Not enough can be said about them. I said this in my last video. I love the Celtics, even though I'm a Lakers fan, because they have zero quit. They fight. They grit. Grind it out, and they simply play team basketball. It's like the Warriors light. It's like the Warriors without all the rings and all the flash. The Warriors do have a little bit of shine to them, and you don't get that with the Celtics. So I mean, I don't know. It's been great to watch. Brad Stevens, you can't say enough about him. It'll be interesting to see them with their full squad. They've been decimated by injury, and even God, who was it that got hurt the other night? Jaylen Brown tweaked his hamstring again, I believe. So I don't know. They've just been phenomenal all year. And everybody counted him out, especially after the injury to Kyrie, including myself. So it's nice to see a team not give up on their season like that. And last but certainly not least, the Warriors and the Rockets. I just want to talk about them really quickly. Obviously look to be on a collision course in the Western Conference Finals, as most people have expected pretty much all year. To me, I've seen enough to confirm that no one is beating Golden State. I don't think that series between them and Houston is going to be as close as people think. I think the Warriors are going to win in 5, maybe 6 games, probably split the first 2 in Houston. Golden State wins both of them back in Oakland. And then Rockets probably win Game 5 in Houston and then get closed back out in Oakland. The thing for me is the biggest difference is the Warriors have something to fall back on and the Rockets don't seem to. And what I mean is not only do the Warriors have the best collection of talent in their starting roster or in their starting 5, but they also don't live and die by the 3. They get a ton of layups, a ton of backdoor cuts, a ton of easy buckets. And then obviously they have someone who is just simply unguardable. You have to hope that he misses. It is just that simple in Kevin Durant. He can get to any spot on the floor, and he can shoot over everyone in the league. So there isn't a whole lot you can do to stop him other than moving him on the court. But once he gets to his spot and get his shot off, it's pretty much cross your fingers and hope it doesn't go in. Not only that, but like I said, the Rockets, when their 3 isn't falling, that lead or deficit increases, like that. If they're up by 15 and all of a sudden they go cold from the 3-point line, like that lead will evaporate in a minute. And same can be said if they're down by 15 or 20 points. If they start hitting threes, I mean, they are as explosive of an offense as you've ever seen. But that's the problem. I think with Golden State, if their 3-point shot doesn't fall, it doesn't kill their offense because they still play within a certain system. I had this talk not that long ago with someone about, on a player level, talking about LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, where a lot of people think that LeBron James, when he goes to a team and leaves a team, that team is obviously far better than they were when he got there. And then once he leaves, it's far worse than they were. And they think that is because the team is bad, the coaching is bad. And I think it is something different. I think it is the fact that LeBron James is the system that they play in. And so once that leaves, you're kind of out in limbo. And that's why I think you see some of those teams, like you saw the Miami Heat struggle, you saw the Cleveland Cavaliers struggle. I'm not saying that there isn't any drop-off, because there is. I'm just simply saying I think the drop-off isn't necessarily because LeBron James is so great, but I think it is because he is the system, and that system has left, and now you're kind of stuck with nothing. And that speaks to his greatness, but I also think it speaks to what makes him so weak, is he sort of hurts himself by being so great. The thing with Kobe was, sure, Kobe shot the ball a lot, and Kobe was going to get his 25, 30 shots up in the game, no questions asked. But the difference was he didn't just get the ball at the baseline, dribble up 94 feet, and then shoot the ball. It was a lot of times within the system that they ran. So same thing can be said about Golden State. Steph Curry goes out. Maybe the style of play changes, but the overall system, they can sort of take in someone, put someone out, and sort of still make things work because the system and the concepts are largely, I won't say largely the same, but they are relatively similar. Whereas with LeBron James, when he goes to the bench, everyone seems to be like headless chickens. And it's like, what do we do now? What do we do here? And I think that is similar to the Golden State Rockets scenario where Houston, if they're not hitting their threes, it's like, well, what do we do now? Whereas with the Warriors, there is still some structure. Even if their jumpers aren't falling from deep, there is still some structure that they can use to get easy buckets. And I think that is going to be the difference in the series. I think, like I said, Warriors in 6 games, maybe 5, we'll see. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as close as people think that they are. So that's all I got for now. I will see you guys in the next episode. Probably talk about the end result of the Cavs-Raptors series tonight, which I think is going to end in a sweep. I don't think the Sixers are going to get swept. They should have won the last game. They should have won at least 2 of these games. I think they're a good enough team that they aren't going to get swept. So we'll see how that shakes out tonight. But until then, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.